Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 199th episode of the Simple Sophisticate. Now, I'm going to start today's episode a little bit differently than I have in the past because it actually is inspiration for today's episode, and I want to try to be as forthright as possible with you, the listeners and the readers of the Simply Luxurious Life blog. So I'm up very early this Sunday morning. It's daylight saving time. As we know, we've lost an hour here in the States, and I'm 1 hour closer to watching Barefoot Contessa's new episode. That was my consolation as I woke up having lost an hour of sleep. Anyway, so I'm here in the office with Oscar, and Norman is asleep in the bed still, and I received a review on the podcast that I want to share with you guys because I struggled with exactly what this commenter shared, and I wanted to be honest about it. And then, as I said, it fed into today's episode perfectly. So let me begin with this feedback from a listener I think who's been listening for quite some time, which is why I took a close look at it. This is a saving grace. And she's commenting on last week's episode, 198, with Jenna Birch and her book, The Love Gap. And she says, awful episode. Why do women, and I am one, whine about men? Seriously, am I the only 40-ish female that finds this pedantic? I struggled with last week's episode, and here's why. As I started to go through the conversation, I did sense a deeper connection to what the author was trying to do. I felt she was trying to say, keep the bar high, just shift how we are going about building our relationships, which I think is very important. On the flip side, I do think we need to stop thinking about building relationships. In this case, it was men. So much, and rather focus on what it is we want to bring to the world. Now, for some of us, it may be something that aligns with building a family, and that's wonderful. But what I have found for myself is that I spent a lot of time focusing on that, and that was not sincerely what or who I wanted to become. And I do wish I could get those 10 years back in my 20s. I wish I could have started going and pursuing my particular passions that I discovered in my 30s so much earlier. But you can't go back and change the past. And part of what made my 30s what they are was because of my experiences in my 20s. So I respect that, and I don't have any regrets. But I don't want people to make the same mistake. And I don't think, in all honesty, based on the students that I've taught over the last 16 years, I don't think they're approaching the world the same way my generation did. And I applaud them for that. They are doing it more thoughtfully. And because I know many of my listeners are from the millennial generation, I wanted to bring that author on because we do have a broad audience on this podcast. And I am so fortunate to say that. In fact, we have men who listen to this as well. And so I'd be curious to hear from the men on how you think about these different topics, because when we all sit down and have a conversation, we can better understand each other. So I do applaud Jenna for diving into this in a very logical, scientific way. And the fact of the matter is, if we stop if we stop refraining from being authentic, then we welcome and encourage others to be authentic as well. Men, women, and of all ages as well. And I think the more we all do that, the better off we can all be, whether we're pursuing a relationship or not. So I do want to thank the listener for leaving that review, because it was tingling in the back of my mind. This whole concept of living simply luxuriously is about being authentic, and that's what came out of that conversation. That's why I decided to put that episode on this podcast, because it really drove home that point that being authentic is something to embrace, not run away from. And I hope that's the message that came out of our conversation. And I'll leave a link to that podcast episode if you want to revisit it or listen to it for the first time. So I do have a few other reviews I'll share at the end of the episode, as I usually do each week. But that one I felt led into what we're going to talk about today, because I read an article a couple months ago, and it was a profile piece on Lauren Dern. And she said this one particular quote that just lit me up. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That is so true. So her quote is what's going to kick off today's episode. But before I get into what the topic is and her quote, today's Petit Plaisir is a book from a few years ago that I have revisited recently as I was finishing up the second book of The Simply Luxurious Life. But I was researching a particular topic on entrepreneurship. And this particular book was a resource for me. And it's something that I highly recommend for you as you go about your everydays. And I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't already found it and read it. So I'll be talking about that later in today's episode. But let's get to today's topic. As you may be wondering, what the heck is it, Shannon? Come on. So what it is 9 reasons to savor being in the choosing seat. That is the term that Lauren Dern gives it. In other words, the gift of being single or having the time of your life when you're on your own. So here we go. The quote that I spoke of. The best part of being single is that I get to know men and see what I love about them in a way that when I was 19, I never afforded myself the opportunity. At 19, I would think, oh, I got picked. And I would just go along with it, happy to be picked by a man instead of choosing. And now I'm in the choosing seat. Now, this is her comment, Lauren Dern, the actress Lauren Dern, on being 50 and divorced and just being in love with her life. Whether you are single and have never been married, or you are divorced or widowed, whether you have children or your only children are of the 4-legged variety like myself, when you step into a time of your life in which you are not romantically attached to someone, some will embrace the change immediately, while some will dread the loss of the partner, for whatever reason that you lost them. Today's episode, as I said, was inspired by this quote and tangentially with regards to the comment that I began the episode with regarding episode 198. And this evolution of modern romance and how to navigate it well in order to find, if we want to find, and then cultivate a loving partnership. As I examine and am savoring my own singleness at the moment, I would not want anything else at this point in my life. I reflect on what the past 10 years has revealed itself to me and what it has been capable of when it comes to my career. And I know, based on my personality and my temperament, had my energies been shifted, my life would be significantly different. And from my perspective, based on my dreams and my desires and the ideas of what a quality life is, I would not be content had I taken that other path. That again is based on knowing myself. Each individual will define their best life differently, and that is where we must say, good for you, but not for me. And I want to thank Amy Poehler for succinctly coining a phrase that we all need to embrace so that we can celebrate each other's decisions and not compare or compete with each other, because we all have a different definition or idea of living well. As we step away from our 20s and into our 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond, I find single living can be ever more attractive. And due to this, if we do choose to seek a partner, it makes it easier that we will truly mesh with those that we might choose to be with. How so? Let's take a look at the 9 reasons why being single can be a powerful time of growth, rejuvenation, and clarification. So number 1, you become clear about what is and is not in alignment with your authentic self. When you are your own company, you become particularly clear and more understanding of what you say yes to without forethought, but at the same time, why you say yes or no to anything life presents you with. As I will discuss in point 7 later in our podcast, once we learn what is sincerely us and what is influenced by the outside world, we can then choose to understand why it is hard to break molds that are merely masks. And then we can finally remove those masks entirely so that we are making decisions that are in line with our true and most authentic self. So that's number 1. You become clear about what is and is not in alignment with your authentic self. Number 2, you become able to differentiate between true connection and lust that is provoked purely by physical attraction. Ah, the innocence of youth. The movies, the media, even everyday people we may find ourselves surrounded by at any given time perpetuate the idea that physical attractiveness needs to be a primary ingredient, if not the most important ingredient, in order to build a relationship with someone. Oh, the silliness of this belief. And I throw myself in that category when I was young. Whether we learn this sooner or later, when we finally learn it, we can be far more conscious of why we are drawn to someone. And while it is absolutely healthy and natural to be drawn to someone because of their looks, we also become aware that we need more to pursue for the purposes of a lasting relationship. So celebrate this difference in growth and when we do, we'll make life and the meeting of a myriad of people far more enjoyable. It's okay to go, oh my gosh, that person is quite stunning. But we also know that that doesn't mean we want to pursue a relationship with them. And vice versa. Just because you look nice and someone compliments you on how nice you look, okay, great, they compliment you. That's a lovely gesture. It doesn't mean we need to be drawn to that person for a relationship. Maybe they should have other qualities as we get to know them that we're looking for to consider that opportunity. So that's number 2, being able to differentiate between a true connection and being purely provoked by physical connection or physical attraction. Number 3, you can invest entirely and build with your full energy a career you love. Having your own financial security is the sweetest pillow to sleep on each night, whether you are in or not in a relationship. When you have that ability, and we all have the ability, it's a matter of choosing to seek out the experts to teach us and then making the decisions to create that financial security. When you have that, you give yourself a peace of mind and thus decision-making power that is separate from financial stability. And you can connect with people on a purely authentic level, not out of need, but out of curiosity and sincerity. Now, as I mentioned above, the decade of my 30s has been an amazing gift. If I had been in any of the relationships that I let go of during the course of this time period, I know for certain my energy would not have been enough to tend to the goals I set for myself. Now, to find a partner that would support my goals would have been wonderful. And I know that people are in those types of relationships. But that support needs to go both ways. And it was never the case in the relationships that I was with. And thus, that is a large part as to why I went my separate ways. There are always variables with things that are out of our control, and especially so when we're in relationships with other people. And others may say, well, your career too is out of your control. Yes and no. Yes, I can't control the economy, and no, I can't control customers or readers or anything along those lines, but I can control the quality of the product that I share. And I can make sure that I do my best. That's what I have control over. I have the control to do my best. I can do my best in a relationship and it still won't work out. I can do the best in my job and it still won't work out. But at the same time, I'm also dealing with far more people with my career than I am in a relationship. And if I'm trying to build a financial security that I can sleep well with at night because I believe in what I'm doing and I believe that I'm offering something good to the world, then that's a gift that no one can take away from me. All right. But I can't control another person in my life. I can love them. I can be kind to them. I can do everything that could be a pillar of a strong relationship. But if our paths don't align, our timing doesn't work out, I can't control that, and neither can they. So I think there's something to keep in mind there. When you have the opportunity to be on your own, maximize it, utilize it. It's an amazing time. It's an absolutely amazing time. So that's number 3. You can invest entirely and build with your full energy a career you love. Number 4, you begin to date thoughtfully. Case in point, when you begin to learn the strengths and gifts that would work well in a partnership, you begin to date more thoughtfully. I have found as I get older, those people that I date are more lovely in general. They're more amazing. And what I mean by that is that it's because I am dating more thoughtfully and I'm not making the mistakes in the decisions of who to date that I made in my 20s. But at the same time, I also am more clear about what will work well. And so I'm putting the odds in my favor. I may not be as active in my dating, but it's because I'm being more discerning. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You need to use your time wisely. And our lives are full and fantastic and fabulous all on their own without the dating part. And when we choose to do that, when we choose thoughtfully, we have a much more positive experience. So that's number 4. You date thoughtfully. 5, you can travel to destinations that pique your curiosity and your curiosity alone. The gifts of traveling to and doing what you've always dreamt about. What an amazing gift to have. Whether it is venturing to destinations that are completely new to you because they're on your bucket list and you're going to check them off, or if you're like me, you like to return to the same place again and again because it gives you comfort and creative ideas that always get birthed when you step away from your home, but you also have some things you can know and understand that will be there and you can depend upon. And you can enjoy every minute of wherever you choose to go. You can stay as long or as little as you like and meet amazing people along the way because you are traveling with the world. So that's number 5. You can travel to destinations that pique your curiosity and your curiosity alone. Number 6, you become comfortable in your body and understand the necessities of taking care of your overall well-being. There is a love for your body that begins as you recognize all that it does for you and all that it has enabled you to do thus far in your life. And as we begin to understand our bodies are like nobody else's, we also begin to want to take proper and thoughtful care of it so that it can perform at its best. I especially have found this to be true the latter half of my 30s, and I've always known good health is important. I can remember being in my preteens doing exercises, thinking, okay, I need to make sure, because I've been reading all these magazines and all these books at that age. And my mom just kept asking, what are you doing? And she was very supportive of it. And I just kind of created my own little exercise regime when I was younger. And I've always started to do that throughout different periods of my life and tweaked it as I go because I understand this. But as I said, since I've been in my 30s, my mid to late 30s, I've really appreciated it because I also know what can happen if you don't tend to your body. It doesn't just happen magically. It's something that does take conscious effort. And so I have seen my body as even more of a gift and have more gratitude toward it, and thus want to take better and the best care I possibly can of it. So that's number 6. You become comfortable in your body and you understand the necessities of taking care of it, and therefore you're taking care of your entire well-being. And I share this point because we start to recognize and understand the depth of a person's character beyond the body. We also come to understand the power of taking care of our own body and what it enables it to do, regardless of our age. And we become less labeling, at least in my mind, of what I can or can't do at a certain age. Because I think a lot of the things get perpetuated are myths. And what I mean by that is, well, you've hit your 40s, no wonder no, it's not no wonder because you hit your 40s, it's no wonder because you haven't been taking care of your body. And now I'm not saying that there's different genetic factors that also could play a role. That's absolutely true. And there's things that we can't control, but there are a lot of things we can. And I am a big advocate of taking control of the things that are in our power and educating ourselves. And I hope that comes across in this podcast and also on the blog with the different posts that are shared. All right, so we have 3 more. 7, you have more time to tend to areas of personal growth that need attention, such as your insecurities and becoming more self-aware. As I mentioned in number 1, when we become more in tune with who we truly are, we discover our tendencies. We reflect on our past, come to understand what has been nurtured into our personality and what is truly innate. And when we don't understand something or understand but realize we need to improve and therefore want to improve, We have the courage to recognize seeking out an expert is an investment in ourselves and not a sign of weakness. By investing in ourselves, we are investing in the overall quality of our lives. Not only will we enjoy our company more, but the relationships we choose to build will be healthier and have the potential to be stronger should we wish them to grow. So that's number 7. You have more time to tend to areas of growth, personal growth that is, that need attention. Number 8, you can focus on a passion project. Now, we talked about how in number 3, you can focus on your career and really invest in it. And this is kind of an overlapping of that because often our careers are in part or wholly, if we're fortunate, to be a passion project that turns into our career. So here we go. So much more time can be dedicated to what we are curious to dive into and explore. Working through the weekend or late into the evenings or waking up early, case in point, to tend to tasks before we either head to work or get our day started. We can do that, and we will be fueled by the results we begin to see and understand how important it truly is to listen to our passions and follow our curiosities. Number 8 is what I'd like to say is we don't have to worry about waking someone up when we get up in the morning. We don't have to worry about keeping the lights off or keeping the music low or making too much noise in the kitchen, because we do want to be thoughtful of our partner when we're in a relationship. But when we are not in a relationship, we can wake up as early as we want. We can turn on the music in 3 different rooms. We can get the tea kettle clacking away with the whistling and not worry about waking someone up. And I think there's something to be savored in that. There's also different things that we can do in a relationship so we can still do those things, but depending on where we live and the time schedules and whatnot, we just have to adjust a little bit more. So why not savor that time when we can entirely devote it to our passion project? Number 9, last but not least, you have a sincere understanding that another person will not complete you, as that is your responsibility alone. As you move through each of the previous 8 points, you will begin to recognize, I hope, that what you have been searching for cannot be outside of yourself. It can only be found within. Doing so does not mean you will be single forever if you do not want to be, but you learn the amazing gift you give yourself by letting yourself be with yourself completely. And depending upon what you unearth during this time on your own, you're going to discover the life that you truly wish to live. And you will know how to proceed successfully forward into your future, whether that is attempting to build a relationship or whether that is no. Previous relationships have not been fulfilling. I am more fulfilled on my own, and I'm going to go about my life as it is because it's amazing. I think honoring that, listening to that, shutting out the outside world that would like us to think only one way is an act of courage, but it is an amazing gift to yourself. And even if your way superficially aligns with what the world may say, your definition of it, your way of going about it will be unique to you. And to honor that too takes courage because it's a recognition of what works for you and enables you to be your best self. So that's number 9. You begin to have a sincere understanding that another person will not complete you, as that is your responsibility alone. The time that we have the opportunity to be single and on our own is a time to realize that all the strength that we already have within ourselves, whether we are in a relationship or not, and we can carry that forward into our next relationship or into the life we want to build for ourselves. Just as the image on today's show notes reveals, and just for listeners, there's one single coffee cup, and on one side there's shade because the sun is streaming through a window, and on the other half the table and half the cup is beautiful sunshine. There is a bright and beautiful sunlit side, but too often we dwell on the negative when we're single or are widowed or are divorced. And I describe all of those as being single, and I hope that I'm not hurting anyone's feelings by doing that. It's what I mean is you're simply on your own. But I just want to make sure that when I do say single, I mean any type of living on your own. We need to focus on the bright side And I mean that literally because of this picture, but we also need to focus on how many amazing gifts we're being given in that particular opportunity in our lives. While yes, we may have lost something, or we may think we don't have something that we should have, the truth is the greatest gift is to unearth our fullest potential and embrace and then share with the world what we discover. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. It was something that I've been working through all week this week because of what happened on Monday with the episode. Not what happened, but like I said, what I felt as I was producing it and bringing it to you. But then it was punctuated by that comment that I shared at the top of the episode. This is your journey. And I think we need to just really embrace that idea of good for you, a sincere good for you with whatever journey you want to take. But I'm going to do my own thing. And you know what? We can both do those things, whatever they are, and we can celebrate each other. And I think it's so important we do that. So Jenna's book was amazing. And I sincerely and truly applaud her research and effort. And each of us is on our own discovery of what is piquing our curiosity. And that's what was piquing her curiosity. And I honor that. I learned a lot from the conversation, and I hope you did too. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the comments, either on YouTube or on the blog. Oh, speaking of the show notes, you can visit the blog to find the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast199. Now, I will be right back with this week's Petit Plaisir. So this week's Petit Plaisir is a book that came out a few years ago, and it's entirely dedicated to daily rituals, how artists work, by Mason Curry. And he actually started a blog quite a few years ago titled Daily Routines, and on it he would share different routines found in different biographies, autobiographies, interviews, things along the way that artists eventually would share. This is my routine, this is what I've done. And that was just his regular blog post, was just sharing the daily routines that artists would practice. And so eventually it was turned into a book, and it's a great book. It is full of all sorts of different routines. And the one I'll share with you, actually I have two that I'll share with you that are all in the show notes as well, one is from Colette. And this was actually revealed in a book by Judith Thurman, The Secrets of the Flesh, A Life of Colette. And she writes, Colette's late 50s were probably the happiest and certainly the most fecund years of her life. She continued both to live and to work like an Olympian. And as much all champions, she kept in training. She walked and swam vigorously. She smoked and drank very little. She kept her muscles toned with massage. She and Maurice apparently had an athletic sex life. During the summer, she adopted a frugal diet and began losing weight. Back in Paris, she consulted a fashionable quack who gave her blood transfusions. The donor was an attractive young woman, and these, she claimed, improved her vision and increased her vitality. But perhaps her most essential beauty secret was to surround herself with a circle of younger friends, male and female, whose hunger for life helped to recharge her own. Quote, the pleasure I take in contemplating lives on the ascendant reassures me about myself, end quote, she told Germaine Patat. Quote, I see so many people who as they age find joy only in their diminution. End quote. So you get into the minds of these artists. And while some of their practices, you may be like, what? There's no way. That's silly. There's other things you're going to say, oh, that's a great idea. Or I have seen that work in my life. Maybe I should keep doing that on a regular basis. And one other quote I want to end with regards to this book is a quote from Maya Angelou. And she says, I have always got to be the best. I'm absolutely compulsive. I admit it. I don't see that as a negative. Inspiring women. And there are men artists in the book as well, but the book is called Daily Rituals because I sincerely believe that it is our rituals, daily, weekly, monthly, seasonally, yearly, that give us something to look forward to and elevate the quality of our everyday lives. So that's on the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com /podcast 199. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast where I'll recommend a book, a film, or a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Now, I have a few reviews from listeners that I would like to share. Most importantly, to say thank you to these people for taking the time to share what you enjoy about this podcast and how you partake in listening to it. And you'll find as I share a few of these this week, everyone's going to enjoy it in their own way. And I love getting to know you guys in this way. So here are a few reviews. Case in point, this review comes from C.A. Fuga, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that right, but I Cafuga, and they write, I listened to all the back episodes while sewing a Regency era jacket for my daughter's Halloween costume. It was kismet. I felt connected to others who value style and self-expression. Thank you. Thank you, as I said, for sharing exactly how you take in this podcast, what you're doing in your life, and introducing yourselves to us. So I appreciate your time. Our next review comes from Marshmallow Aquarius, and they write, this podcast is a delight. To use Shannon's phrase, it's a petit plaisir. Shannon is clearly a woman who charts her own course in life with style, intelligence, a discerning eye, good taste, and chocolate. Shannon is 20 years younger than I am, yet I am always learning from her, and her podcast is a real treat. Thank you, Marshmallow Aquarius. And I love that we have a common interest, especially with the chocolate. In fact, I was just eating a double chocolate, I guess that's a redundant, chocolate cookie the other day. And oh my gosh, isn't chocolate just amazing? Okay, anyway, thank you though sincerely for your time and your enthusiasm. Case in point with regards to the audience being men and women, I received a review or a comment, I should say, that emailed me about the podcast from Randy. And Randy writes, I'm aware your intended audience for your podcast is women, but I wanted to write to you as a man to say thank you. Your episodes about solitude and living alone well are truthful and impactful. I also loved listening to all the episodes about love. As a hopeful romantic living alone and remaining patient and content with my life as it is, I believe your podcast to be among the most beautifully written and most inspiring of all the podcasts I listen to. Please know I will remain a listener regardless of my gender. Well, Randy, I just want to thank you for taking the time to introduce yourself, because I think there are other men too that are listening. And while you may be in the minority with regards to the listenership, you are very much appreciated as a listener. And the reality is, I think we have more in common in how we go about life than we do different. And I think that's the beauty of realizing that as we move forward. So thank you for your feedback. I sincerely appreciate your time. And the last review I'd like to share is from K.O. Pelican. And they write, I love Shannon's podcast. Her upbeat, thoughtful tone is just what I want to hear. I try to delay listening to each episode, trying to wait until later in the week when I really need a boost. I greatly enjoy the subject matter and her overall approach. Brava! Well, thank you, K.O. Pelican, for, again, sharing how you listen to it. I love that idea of, your week and how you go through your week and how you feel through your week, and you know how to add boost and energy throughout it, whether it's this podcast or a particular activity or different rituals that we do. That self-knowledge is so powerful. So thank you for demonstrating that in your comment. If you are a listener and you have been interested in leaving a review, yours may too be shared on an upcoming episode. And I thank you to everyone who has taken the time to do so. It is my sincere pleasure to bring this podcast to you, and I look forward to next week and the topic we get to talk about. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide, now available in paperback as well as ebook and audio versions, which are available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. And to receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart your weekend, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or a morning cup of coffee. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée.